Shalom, my brothers and sisters. This is Rabbi Bradley Shavit Artson at the Ziegler School of Rabbinic Studies, American Jewish University. Week after week, we share wisdom from the Torah, and we will this week as well, but I can't do it based on the weekly Torah portion because my heart is broken. I, you, and so many of us around the country and around the world have been riveted by yet another series of horrific violence and indignities imposed upon black people by white people. Yet again, I'll remind you of some of the incidents of this week. George Floyd shoved to the ground, a neck with a knee on his back as a policeman was urged and pleaded, please take off your knee, who wouldn't, and he died from that assault, while other officers watched and chose not to intervene. Christian Cooper, a birder in a park in New York City, accosted by someone who played the race card on him and threatened to tell the police that a black man was assaulting her, knowing that that could indeed endanger his life and be a death sentence itself. At a WeWork gym in Minneapolis, a team of black entrepreneurs accosted by a white man demanding to see their identity because, of course, they couldn't be just working out in the gym. And those are only a handful of the cases that happen day after day, week after week, in which a privileged assumption by white people results in degradation, suffering, and death to black people again and again and again. And so this week I'm called to speak out from the depths of our tradition, from our shared biblical heritage, from our shared humanity, to say this must stop. We are not trapped by our past. The racism that has been built into the core of American history, of Western history, of world history, the reliance on sheer power by people of all races to oppress others that has landed so disproportionately on people of color. It does not have to be our destiny if we choose a new beginning. So here I want to remind us of self-interest, if nothing else. Morris Raphael Cohen, brilliant philosopher from the turn of the last century, 100 years ago, wrote, "The Jews cannot expect to receive justice in an unjust and sick world." That is true for all of us. We all suffer every time a human being is assaulted. And while we may not be the victim of that moment, we are in that instant, by our silence, by our indifference, declaring that we're willing to be in a world that's governed by brutal power and cruel self-interest. It was Dietrich Bonhoeffer, the Christian pastor, who was murdered by the Nazis, who said, "We are not to simply bandage the wounds of our victims beneath the wheel of injustice. We are to drive a stake into the wheel itself." It's not enough to bandage wounds while injustice continues. We must stop the structures of injustice. And in that regard, there's no greater wisdom than the Torah and the Bible. Tzedek, tzedek, tirdof, the book of Deuteronomy tells us, you shall pursue justice. And it repeats the word twice, because when there's an injustice in front of you, you should pursue justice. And when there isn't one in front of you, but there's one that you hear of, then go out of your way to pursue and to stop the injustice. The prophet Amos teaches us, "To me, O Israelites, you are just like the Ethiopians, says the Holy One. True, I brought Israel up from the land of Egypt, but also the Philistines from Caphtor and the Arameans from Kir." God himself weighs in through the prophet to tell us that all humans are beloved, that we are all, if we are to build a community of love, of justice, then we must stand up for each other. And this week, the people are rising up. So let us be sure to stand as allies and as supporters with the people who are saying no, no to violence, no to injustice, no to the structures of power that blithely continue to crush people of color under their weight and under their burden. It's enough. It's way past enough. It's too much. And we are all suffering broken hearts and many of us broken bones because of this. So let us come together. Let our future reflect the best of who we can be, better than our past. Let us show that we are not trapped into endless cycles of oppression and assertions of blind power and self-interest, but rather that we can be defined as the Bible asks us to by our better angels, by our vision of compassion and love, by our vision of a city on the hill. Tzedek, tzedek, tirdof. Let us pursue justice today and always so that each of God's children can shine. Shalom.